everybody. Welcome. It's Natha Perkins from Electra Astrology. When we're talking about the nodes, we are looking at our path of evolution, how we grow, and we are all here on some level to grow. Some of us have chosen different versions of growth than others, but we're all here as souls wanting to learn something, wanting to have new experiences. As we have entered into the South Node being in Virgo, we're going to come to understand that perfection is totally overrated. We have spent our whole lives trying to color inside the lines, make the prettiest picture possible, and Pisces is where there are no boundaries, there are no rules, and there's not even really a coloring book. And we're going to have to make sense of that in our own personal way over the next 18 months. You've heard me say, if you've been here for a while, that the Virgo-Pisces axis is probably the most difficult axis for all of us as humans to work with. So, you ready to dive into the deep end and get difficult here? So before we get started, if you don't have your hands on my free Astrology is a Superpower ebook, you can get that using the link in the box below. And of course, if you like my style and you want to book a private reading, you can find me at electraastrology.com. So as you know, I am not a typical astrologer in that I don't just translate, here's your sun sign, here's your moon sign, this is what it means. My teachings are all centered around helping you know yourself on a deeper level, helping you become more introspective. One of the things that I notice, and I work with a lot of people as clients, but I also have a lot of people in my life. I have a lot of friends, a lot of connections. I know a lot of people, and I end up talking to a lot of people. It's very hard to be self-reflective. It's not something that comes easily or naturally to most people. You'd think that it would. But, we get very caught up, and here's where I'm going to start off talking about the South Node in Virgo. Virgo is an energy where we get caught up in being busy and in doing. I'll be going into that more this month in the Virgo-Pisces episode when we have our full moon in Virgo. So keep an eye out for that if this subject matter interests you. But the archetype of Virgo is where we learn how to perform. We learn how to do. We are busy. We are looking around, making sure that people see how helpful we are, making sure that we're doing the right thing. We want the accolades. We want the pats on the back, and we don't want to get in trouble. There's something about Virgo where it's really easy to get in trouble if you mess something up. And, the South Node being in Virgo now is where we want to start examining on a deeper level what we are still doing in our lives that feels a lot like I am trying not to get in trouble. I'm trying to be perfect. I'm trying to do as much as possible, handle as many things as I can, answer all the questions correctly. I'm trying to color in the lines. Now, it's valuable to know how to color in the lines because we all have to live together on this planet. And we all have adults and authority in our lives that we don't want to get in trouble with, right? So this becomes an archetype where we can get very wrapped up in doing all the Virgo things. But when we're doing the Virgo things, we typically are not self-reflecting. Self-reflecting doesn't look like, what am I going to eat today? Or what am I going to wear today? Or what did that person say to me that so offended me? Self-reflection is going into the deeper layers of the self and inquiring, why did this impact me like this? Or what is it that I really want? What am I really feeling? How am I responding to this situation in my life? Do I want to do this thing that I'm about to obligate myself to doing? And frankly, most of us were not taught to be self-reflective. And this is true culturally for us. It's more about making sure that the person in authority, whether we want their approval, whether we want it to impress them, we want to fit into the group, we want our boss to not be mad at us, we want our parents to think we're good. We learn to sell ourselves out. We learned that it doesn't pay off to be self-reflective because we're not going to be able to do anything differently anyway. So we learn to turn off the part of us that actually has the reaction or that feels the deeper feeling, or the part of us that is actually saying no to doing this task. And then we get to spend our whole adult lives, if possible, unpacking that conditioning and learning how to self-reflect again. Now, like I said, I know a lot of people who are not self-reflective. They do not know how to tune in with themselves. They are very busy up in their head, where they're thinking and ruminating and making sure that everything on their list is going to be crossed off by the end of the day, or they're planning for the future. I need to go to the grocery store and then I need to run by the dog kennel. Or they're really busy making phone calls, talking to people, making sure everyone in their life feels attended to. Busy. Virgo is busy. And the South Node being in Virgo means that we're all looking at the places where we are busy and distracted, where we replace self-reflection and self-knowledge with the to-do list. We don't want to get in trouble. We want to seem good. We want to seem virtuous. We want to make sure that everybody knows how on top of things we are and how we show up and we always call and all of that. But we look at what's not working in that respect. How is that not working for me anymore? How is this exhausting me? How is this really pulling me away from deeper self-knowledge? And the deeper self-knowledge, as I'm always teaching, is so imperative right now because, we all come onto the planet with a lot of intuition and a lot of connectedness to source. We come from source into human form. Pretty quickly, we lose connection with source because we become part of this world, and this world is so busy, and we are quickly learning what we need to do, how we need to perform in order to be safe, in order to be loved, in order to be approved of. And it's empty and it leads to anxiety. So if you are somebody that deals with anxiety, take a big deep breath right now and just tune in to that feeling of anxiety that is probably very present in your body and in your system quite often. And see whether you can make some connections to that anxiety and this perpetual to-do list. This part of you that feels that it's up to you to solve the problems. That if you have to add one more thing onto your plate, so be it. The part of you that is secretly kind of delighted when people are patting you on the back and telling you that you are doing a really good job. Or if you notice that you wear busyness as a badge of honor, like a lot of us do, notice that. This is where some of that self-reflection starts to be really useful. Because when we begin to notice how we are navigating and how much we take on, and what our motivations for taking those things on are, then we can begin to piece out what is no longer working and, put it in the goodwill pile, which is all about the South Node. You've heard me refer to the South Node as being the trash can, where we have to really get honest. Like, this is a coping mechanism for me. This is a comfort zone. It's like wearing that hair sweater where you're wearing it and it's making you itch the whole time, but you're not going to take it off because it's kind of keeping me warm and, I've had it for a really long time, but scratch, scratch. Okay. So when we're looking at South Node, Virgo, we're saying, uh-oh, some of this scurrying around that keeps me unconscious, right? That keeps me so busy that I don't have time to feel into myself. I don't have time to listen to myself. I don't even have time to address why I feel so anxious all the time. I have to take some of that stuff off of my plate because the anxiety is not going to magically go away without some personal work around why it's there in the first place. So this is when we start to bring in the archetype of Pisces. And the North Node says, this is where you go. This is where your lessons are. This is what you've signed up to learn. We've all signed up for this for 18 months. And this is completely different than Virgo. Pisces is about the relationship to the divine, to higher power, God, spirit, whatever you feel comfortable using. And this is a hard one to understand. Right? We understand being busy and a to-do list and getting approval for a job well done. That's very easy for us. And in fact, it feels very comfortable and safe. When we talk about moving into a connection with source, it becomes murky. And I know that I talk to a lot of you when I'm doing readings, and if you have a lot of placements in the 12th house or you have a lot of Pisces placements or a strong Neptune, there is usually an indication that this is a lifetime where you're here to work on your relationship to your higher power, which also includes your relationship to trusting that everything is going to happen for a reason. Everything is going to happen no matter what you do. And that when things happen, that you're capable enough of being okay. You're strong enough to get through them if they're difficult. You're intelligent enough to understand the greater meaning once you have some time and the storyline opens up. And most of you that have these placements, and I would say actually most of the people right now on the planet, have no idea how to connect in with higher power or source. Or if they do, it's few and far between. I have a lot of you that say, well, I want to have a stronger relationship with my higher power, but I don't really make time for it. And I like to say higher power relationship is almost the same as a higher self relationship. We're not going to differentiate that God is something out there. We're going to say that we are all a part of source. I like the concept that we are all a drop in a big ocean. We all have connection to this higher consciousness. Whether or not we are connected to it is the question. And most people aren't connected to it. They don't really know how to start. And it's very confusing. And that Virgo, that doing, and what am I going to eat for dinner? And what am I going to wear? And oh my God, she said this thing to me. And then I said this thing back. And I remember from 1982, we have this, you can even feel my energy as I'm acting it out. It's very frenetic and it's kind of like empty. That is what the comfort zone is. And dipping into a source is harder to understand. Coming into the present moment where you are connected to your body and you are connected to the dynamic field of energetic awareness around you takes a building of a muscle. So let's practice right now. And this is a practice that you can use all day, every day, as often as you want. And it's super simple. You don't have to do a big time commitment. You don't have to spend any money to do it. You just take a deep breath and you close your eyes and you pay attention to the way that breath feels going into your body, the different parts of your chest that expand and contract. And almost instantly, you'll probably feel a relaxation of your nervous system. And you can begin to tune into the various parts of your body, like your hips. What does it feel like in your hip muscles right now? Have you given any attention at all to your hip muscles in the last 24 hours? Probably not. And once you begin to tune into your hip muscles, what do you notice is happening in your lower back? And when you start to pay attention to your lower back, what do you notice up your back and up your neck? This is a way of coming into your physical body, your physical experience, and the here and now, the very present moment. And it's in the present moment that we are the most connected to this source energy. And when we're connected to the source energy is when we can make the connections about what is really important. And we can begin to have a different perspective that is bigger and broader than that little human Virgo perspective that is so concerned about whether the crumbs have been swept properly off of the kitchen floor. And at the same time, we have to acknowledge that there is a dark side of Pisces. And this is what some people are going to be really contending with over the next 18 months, because we're all hitting these lessons from different places and different parts of experience. So while the bigger goal is to connect in with source energy so that you can be a conduit for direction and guidance from your higher self. And we say your higher self is your soul. Your soul knows what it came in to do, what it came into experience. And your soul understands that being a human on this planet comes with a large amount of amnesia, We don't get to remember much when we come in and we have to start from scratch. And humans are very limited. And your soul knows that. And your soul is here to give you directions. We could say your guides, your angels, the universe, it's all here as a support system to give you guidance about what to do next and what to focus on. But if we aren't listening, we won't hear it. And if we're really busy, we won't hear it. And so that's ideally what we're going for with a North Node in Pisces, is we're trying to remember who we are, trying to remember why we came here in the first place, trying to calm some of that overactivity, that desire to do. And I should say too that Mercury is the planet that rules Virgo, which is where we're doing and doing, but Mercury also rules Gemini, which is where we're thinking and thinking. So there's some crossover here. The busyness of the body, the busyness of the mind, the information overload, all of the stuff that feels very human and feels like a common thread that we all have. We're looking at turning some of that down, turning some of that off in favor of coming into a connection with a present moment or with a higher version of self. But before we can get there, some of us are going to have to contend with a lot of fear. That is also a Pisces issue. We fear what we don't understand. And Pisces is very hard to understand. It's like, what do you mean the present moment? What do you mean God? What do you mean we're all part of the same consciousness? On some levels, we can make sense of that. And on other levels, it just feels totally out there. Like, am I making this up? Is this just some fantastical thing? And along with that can come some fear. What if I can never connect? What if the world is going to end? What if we go to war? What if we're under a dictatorship? What if worst case scenario, right? And we will go into worst case scenario when we can't make logical sense of something. And we're trying to make logical sense of it down in Virgo. Now, one of the things about Virgo being the problem solver is that when we get hooked into the fear, the worst case scenarios, the what ifs of Pisces, what do? I'll try to solve the problem. I'll go down into the logical land of Virgo and I'll figure it out. I will figure it out with black and white thinking. Okay, these are all Virgo things, black and white thinking. I will figure it out by being critical and judgmental. I will figure it out by making everything wrong and making myself right. I will figure it out by coming up with a million different things that I need to do in order to solve the problem. I will connect with other people that feel the same way, and we can all form a large body of judgment. And by proxy, we can all feel like we're getting one another's approval. And so we can feel like we're checking that box as well. So there's this thing, this habit, this trail or this groove that we all ride that will become a deeper and deeper trail if we're not careful, if we're not paying attention. We go into fear, then we go into problem solving. And it's the kind of problem solving that I have to solve. We have to solve. We're humans and we're solving. We're humans and we're going to make it better based on our very limited human perspective. Now, what we're trying to do, ideally, on the evolutionary growth part of this path, if we're going to deviate off of this well-worn trail and we're going to make a different trail, this is where we have to start leaning into trusting that we don't know everything and trusting that there is a higher power that is largely running things, that we fancy ourselves in control down here in Virgo. As long as I cross everything off the list, then we'll be okay. But that truly, there are things that are greater than us at work. But in order to accept that, it requires this trust that feels very nebulous. Like, but I'm supposed to trust that it's going to happen, but I have no proof that it's going to happen. So how am I supposed to trust something when there's no proof? Right? And isn't that the quintessential human issue? You've heard me say in my other talks that this idea that we trust the science, sure, we can trust certain pieces of science, right? Certain pieces of science can be easily replicated and prove that something happens consistently and we can count on it happening consistently again. But not everything is going to be replicated in the same way that we're expecting it. Imagine a tomato bush, and all of the tomatoes are coming out large, red, and juicy, and one comes out and it's sort of twisted and it's purple. It's still a tomato, but it didn't follow our logical expectation of what kind of tomato was going to be forming on the vine. So this is hard work because it's going to take a lot of confrontation of fear, or I don't even want to use the word confrontation. It's like an understanding of the fear. But before we can even understand the fear, we have to get self-reflective and we have to say, wow, I don't trust this and I'm feeling a lot of fear. And what I want to do is go in and try to manipulate it and control it so that I don't have to feel the fear anymore, so that I can somehow wrangle an answer that is going to feel predictable. So then my soul can relax. But that's not how it's going to work. What we're supposed to be doing with this nodal axis, we're supposed to be saying, I want to understand why I have this fear in the first place. There's going to be something really valuable about me acknowledging that I have this fear that this thing is going to happen, sitting with the fear, right? Learning to tolerate the sense of fear in our body with the understanding that it's not going to take us out. It's just there to bring us information. It's there to help us build more trust because we can have fear of something. And if we just allow the fear to be there temporarily, it's usually only there temporarily, then we can take some deep breaths and just lean into the idea that, all right, I have to assume that it's going to be okay. I have to err on the side of optimism because all of this Virgo scurrying around trying to fix the problem is making me exhausted and it's overwhelming me and it's making me anxious. And the truth is, like, I can't really fix the problem anyway, right? With some of this stuff that's in the collective right now that feels so terrifying for most people, it's not anything that most people are going to be able to fix. It's something that is larger than us. And we have to lean into our trust that we will be supported, that we will be taken care of, that it is safe to be patient, and it is also safe to not act. Now, in a 12-step tradition, this is called the self-reliance of Virgo. It's all on my shoulders. I have to do it all. And they talk a lot about how that's what leads us into these addictive behaviors. And addiction can be drugs and alcohol. It can also be approval seeking. It can be gossiping and being busy and virtue signaling. We get addicted to those things because it somehow makes us feel like I'm in control. And in the 12-step tradition, the other side of it, which in astrology we call Pisces, is called the God-reliance. And this is where we have to trust. If we go day by day, one day at a time. And that's what it takes when we are trying to soothe ourselves. We're trying to sit with some of that fear that comes up. We're trying to understand where it originally came from. Usually, it doesn't even come from what's right in front of us. It comes from experiences that happened when we were young. So as we're allowing those memories or those knowings to percolate up through our system so that we can develop a deeper understanding of who we are. And, in a way, it's like we can overcome those fears by simply understanding them. But it is a one day at a time kind of thing. We have to keep showing up with trust. We have to keep re-surrendering every day if possible. We want to notice when we've slid back down into self-reliance and problem solving. So this takes a real self-awareness to do this work. So I encourage you, if you're listening to this talk, to really just hold this idea of self-awareness in your hand, in your mind over the next few days. Pay attention to how often you are self-aware. How often are you in this present moment, noticing what this air feels like, noticing what's happening out there, feeling into your physical body, noticing what's happening in your immune system, in your nervous system, feeling into your hip joints, your knees, whatever feels the whatever feels right to you. Notice how often you are in a place of self-awareness. And then, of course, once you come into self-awareness, you can look back and say, look at how I wasn't in self-awareness, right? We're making connections here. Now, in terms of the doing, right? It's like we're looking at Virgo and we have to keep doing because we are humans and we do have responsibilities and we do have to cook the dinners and do the shopping, etc. But the high side of Virgo, and this is really what we're trying to get rid of some of the shadows of Virgo, but we're trying to create a foundation of the lighter side of Virgo, right? We're not getting rid of all of Virgo. We can't. We're humans. We're embodied on the planet. But with Virgo, the key is around making sure that more of what you do comes from a place of wanting to do it, not because we're obligated, because we want to look good, because we don't want to get in trouble. It's more like, what is going to make me feel good in the end? If I go to this party, I'm going to do it because it's something that I want to do. I look forward to seeing everybody. I feel like I will be lit up and excited to be there. Or you might notice, I don't want to go to this party. I don't have the energy for it, and I really just need some downtime. So there's this discerning that we're honing in on, and we're paying attention. Again, we're being self-reflective. We're trying to know ourselves on a deeper level, trying to tune in to what works for me and what doesn't work. Because that whole superficial, celebrities, right? It's very superficial culture. It's like, what brand is she wearing? What kind of work has she had done on her face? What kind of car does he drive? How many albums have they sold? Like, okay, but who cares? There's nothing that's depthful about any of that. So when you catch yourself going on autopilot in the land of like, there's no depth here, that's something to consider. It's like the shallow water. The shallows are nice and safe, but they get really boring after a while. And eventually we kind of want to dive into the water and like swim to the bottom and like be submerged by the different temperatures and the sounds underwater and the way the sunlight shines through the water. Like it can be a lot more interesting in the deep, and we're trying to figure out what's interesting to us. We're trying to figure out what's interesting about us and really get a sense of like, what am I doing here? Because that's what we're opening up into in 2025 is we're starting to look with a much closer eye. We've got out the magnifying glass. Like, what am I here to do? Because this is a time period of extreme soul evolution and soul growth. So those of us that don't want to have to go back and like repeat the same boring lessons, this is a life opportunity where we get to fast track and we get to kind of like do a bunch of the stuff that we didn't get a chance to do last time so that we can do something completely elevated next time we come down. So if you are interested in sort of fast tracking your knowledge and really connecting in with your higher self while you're on this planet in your human self, like this is it. This is the key. This is where we have to look at what we want to leave behind. That's kind of our BS human stuff, and how we want to connect in stronger, and how we want to really fortify and strengthen that source connection. That's the answer. That's the answer to all of this. When you're scared, check in with your source. When you're confused, check in with your source. When you're trying to grow, check in with your source. When you're wanting to experience unconditional love and validation, check in with your source, right? We're all always looking for all of that stuff out there. I'll have it if I make more money. I'll have it if I find the love of my life. I'll have it if I look thinner and more beautiful, like blah, blah, blah. That's not where it's at. It is 100% with a deeper, stronger connection with your higher power, with your higher self. So that's your invitation for this next 18 months, is to continue to really deepen into that, see where it takes you. All right, I hope this was helpful.